Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. State Secretary Magnick and representatives from G20 countries, representatives from OECD countries, and all of the stakeholders group, I'm very, very pleased to be here. And you need to believe me because I'm just landing from Mexico. And if it was not for Heino von Meyer, who is the head of our office here, I would not have been standing here in front of you. So I'm very pleased, I'm very happy. And actually, we are very well represented because we also have our Director of Science and Technology and people from the finance sector, the competition sector, and of course our teams for the G20, because we consider that this is a very, very important undertaking of the German presidency of the G20. You have heard the State Secretary, you have heard Tim O'Reilly of the importance of this issue for the world and for the world economy. But we really believe that the G20 has something to do about it and has something to prove in terms of the benefits that can be derived for people and of the answers of the problems that we are all confronting nowadays. It's not happening in a vacuum because it's not just technology for technology or digital progress for digital progress. It's the fact that we are 8 years after the worst crisis in a lifetime, and we're still struggling to finding the solutions. We're still trapped in what we call the low growth trap in the OECD, where sluggish productivity, weak demand, lack of investment, slowing down of trade is really presenting a very difficult scenario. So the question is, how do we use this fantastic revolution to find answers to the problems we face? And this is why we consider this initiative as a very important one. As was mentioned by the moderator, we produce key issues for digital transformation in the G20, and we hope that this product is going to be also, of course, thank you, State Secretary, for your support for this publication, but this is going to be informing the work of this conference, but also of the digital task force and of the digital ministerial that is going to be also having place in Germany in April. Now, you have heard how fast technology has advanced. Of course, we have documented that at the OECD. We are the house of indicators. We are the house of looking at issues based on evidence. And it's true that the advancement of digital technology is pervasive and is moving very fast. So it's not only the fact that they are there, it's also the fact that it's moving very fast, and it's not only an economic issue, it's social, it's changing the way we work, it's changing the way we think, it's changing the way we interact with each other. And as Tim said, I have said it before, I have my daughter studying, and I see the B20 here, I have my daughter studying in Canada, and I'm amazed that with the smartphone, you can see the face. You can see how she's doing. If she slept, if she eat, I mean, it's just amazing. Maybe the youngsters are not that happy that parents have this tool at their disposal, but the fact is it is changing our life and is helping a lot to move in a much more positive way. These are the kind of progress that we are seeing, the kind of penetration of mobile broadband, the kind of access to fixed and broadband technologies, and I think this is an important reminder of how things are working. We have heard also about some of the challenges that we are confronting with these technologies, and I'm going to go through some of the issues as we have documented them in the OECD. First of all, of course, the question of infrastructure. I think that we have discussed at length how do we advance the digital infrastructure to make things work. Because, of course, we always see the issues from the most advanced economies sometimes. We know that there are laggard economies, but we are also documenting in the OECD the fact that you have this kind of performance. Frontier firms really moving fast in the technological frontier, being very productive. And then you have the laggard firms, which are lagging behind. And I like this graph because, of course, it tells us a lot with very granular information that our teams are using in the OECD. But I can say that this picture actually reflects how technologies are benefiting some groups and how technologies are just not reaching many sectors in our economies, but also many countries in the world, and including in the G20. So this is the kind of challenges that we are facing. The second challenge that, as was also mentioned, is a question of the regulatory frameworks that we are used for the analog world. Do they fit the digital world? And the State Secretary also mentioned it. We don't think so, but we are very comfortable with them, and we need to change. Actually, I was listening to Mr. Haskell from Oxford University, I think, and he was saying, you know, the competition policy, we were always taught that the more firms, the better. The more competition, the better. Well, platform economy does not work like that. The more Facebooks, the worst, because then you will not be connected to the widest network that you need. So rethinking the competition policy is something that we also need to do in terms of all these changing scenarios that we are really facing. This is important because, of course, there is some other challenges in terms of the emergence of winner-takes-all dynamics. When you have these huge technological companies developing products and services that cannot be replicated or that cannot just allow for more firms to enter into the market. These are issues that are real, and I think these are issues that need to be addressed at an international platform like the G20, because it's not the question of just certain countries addressing them and then trying to pass it on to other segments of the world. Third, and we talk about that, State Secretary, the question of trust. And the question of trust, I would like to just say that is what is lacking. I would say that it's not only in terms of the digital technologies and the consumer protection or how much people feel comfortable buying online and how much they feel comfortable that they will be protected if they are not receiving the services that they are requesting. But in general, trust is lacking. And trust is lacking because of the crisis, trust is lacking because of the financial sector, trust is lacking for many of the concerns that we have in terms of inequality, in terms of the feeling that many people have been left behind, and that, of course, this has been transforming into political processes that are becoming very complicated. But at least just to define it for the context of this or for the discussions that we need to have today, trust in the digital economy is of the utmost importance. And we were talking this morning about this issue, and it has two elements. Trust in the sense that you have the systems to make it work, and that you can be protected, and that you can feel comfortable of using the technologies, but trust also for those that are being left behind. And we are very happy thinking and enthusiastically thinking, and Andy Wyckoff is always championing all these solutions that can be brought by the digital technologies, and I have to say that I also believe this is true. But the reality is that 4 billion people are not connected in the world. Just 60% of the world population. And even if we have this promising question of the mobile telephony in Africa and the banking sector advancing their services in countries that are not with the whole infrastructure that we have in the analog world, I think that there is lots of things that we need to be thinking about these issues. There is a question of, for example, for SMEs, we have also seen a very increase in the phishing attacks. These are malicious emails, and the fact is that we have seen an increase of these attacks for SMEs in 43%. And this is a problem because, of course, SMEs, we always know that SMEs are less prone to go for business-to-business online or to use the digital technologies. But the fact that they are being attacked is another aspect because they are less prepared for the risk management systems that you need to have in place to address those issues. So you just get into this topic, and I'm the chief of staff, so I'm not the expert of these issues. But once you get into the issues, it evolves and evolves and evolves in a myriad of challenges that we need to be addressing and that are so important. And the SME question is core to the inclusive growth agenda. Because if we cannot make it work for SMEs, and if we cannot make it work for the normal citizen on the street, then it will not work for anybody, and we will not be making the progress that we need to make. The question of protection of privacy and personal data, that's another very important aspect. And I think, State Secretary, this is the core of the G20, because it's not only about looking at the substance and looking at the issues, but looking at what the collective G20 countries can do together for the international regime to improve the way things work. And I think that's exactly what we would like to see happening in the context of the German presidency, and we're very glad to see the very strong leadership that they have put into these issues. Now, the question, there is this recommendation actually, and I think it's a very important one, that countries need to be developing national comprehensive digital strategies in which you can take a look at the whole things that are interjecting into this, taking real advantage and leveraging of the technological progress. But let me also talk about skills, and you know that, well, this is another picture where you see that, yes, there is a very great progress in terms of broadband websites by use of enterprises, but there are many other products and developments that are not being reaching everybody in the same way, like enterprise resource planning software or cloud computing. So this is within the technological elements or instruments, some of the issues that we would need to also take a hard look, and that is documented in this publication. But then let me move to the question of skills. You know that we just presented the PISA reports. The OECD is a house that gathers information of the student performance, and we launched in December the last PISA results focused on science. We have another survey that is called the PIAC, which is exactly the same, measuring how much adults are well-informed and use their knowledge in certain ways. And you would be surprised because these are the countries that have the most advanced information systems. So there are many countries that do not participate in this survey, and therefore we don't have the information. But even for those countries that are very well advanced, only 25% of the adults feel comfortable using computers. 25%, which is then, let's not take for granted that everything is just hype and very nicely flowing into the rooms of the enterprises or in the schools. The fact is that there are still a lot of issues in terms of people feeling comfortable when dealing with technological devices. The other part is, how do we help people get the skills that they will require for the digital world? And this will require a reframing of the education systems, a reframing of the skills that we teach. Is no longer the question of just passing on information because information is available. It's not the question of memorizing accumulated knowledge. That's just not the issue anymore. The issue is how you build individuals that have the confidence to continue with their learning, because the pace of change is so fast that you just need to be able to continue to learn yourself, self-motivated, creative thinking, problem solvers. You know all these issues that we need to have in terms of education systems, and surprise, surprise, they are not catching up. The education systems are not catching up. And actually, we also found that using technology for classrooms have been very badly designed, and those countries that have massively invested in technological instruments to go for the schools have not improved in their performance on education. So there are many challenges, but I think this is one of the most important ones, because this is what will help us for people when they are confronting with artificial intelligence or with computers that are going to replace the routines that they were used to do, that they can move somewhere to a higher level task. So this is another area that we need to address. On top of the people I told you, 60% that are completely illiterate, and that we will need to start from the scratch on this issue. The other aspect is, as I said, the analog world of regulations, the question of the platform economies. And all this debate that you have heard, I know that we have the labor union representatives here. How do we go for the welfare system in a world where the individuals are the owners of their accounts, are the ones that are going to be building for their pensions? How do we go for contractual arrangements that are so difficult in the platform economy, that are not being ruled by the same kind of thinking as we had before? So these are the questions, some of the questions that we are putting together, and some of the answers, of course, are here, but the fact is that we would need to get it around in the discussion of the task force of the G20 and try to advance for something that is useful. Now, we're not starting from the scratch, and I think it would not be fair to say that the Chinese presidency also endorsed a question of innovation during their work last year. I think that they worked very closely with Germany, because Germany was already in the troika of the G20, and we developed a blueprint for innovation. But I want to just conclude my remarks by saying, let me just see if I have another graph. I don't. Yeah, this is a PISA, and this is the students with high achievement. Even in countries like Hong Kong, China, of course, 25% of high achievers in mathematics. I don't know how do they do it, because it's just amazing the kind of advantage that they have on teaching mathematics. But even in the percentage, the OECD average of students that reach the higher level of performance in these areas is around 12%. So we really are lagging behind in terms of enabling our students to have the skills they need for the digital world. As I said, China started with these discussions. The question really is, how do we manage to get the G20 to focus addressing the issues that are common, developing solutions for the things that we see, and try to build more confidence in something that I said is creating a lot of confusion, is creating a lot of fears for the people. How do we build an agenda on the consumer protection? How do we build an agenda on supporting the SMEs? How do we build an agenda on advancing the technologies that we know are changing the way we operate? And of course, we hope to find some answers. I hope that the G20 will be read as a success when we go out from the Hamburg summit. And the OECD has been a long-standing partner of the G20, long-standing partner of Germany, and so we're very pleased to be here, and we're ready to work to make it a real success. So thank you very much, and I guess we go for the next speakers. Thank you.